Oh, so they're trial using Esol for use.
Yeah, I was just in my office just now.
Should be. I'll keep it low.
Go ahead, Chuck. Good luck finding anything. I got a couple coins. Couple coins in there.
Someone sold one of those wheat pennies from 1909 for $1,000.
Oh my goodness.
I had like 40 of them.
Oh my gosh. What did
I gave them to a friend because she was, I used to babysit her and it was a movie and I was like, she was starting a coin collection. I don't know if mine was minted in the right place.
Right.
I mean, come on, even $100.
Yeah.
It's a penny.
Are you kidding me? I mean, I had some $50 or $50 coins that were because like for when they were using silver, and I had $25 a piece for it.
Those are good.
Like, you know.
I actually had an 1898. I'm just like,
Alright, you guys ready? Get started? We cannot possibly ever have a recurrence of what occurred last week, so we're not going to open the floor to you people.
That was hilarious.
So that was a lot of fun. For those of you who missed last week, Mother's Day was really a fun time over the sanctuary. We had an elongated service. Mom gave her testimony, and then we had some videos of different people speaking and giving Mother's Day testimonies. So the service went, pretty long. I think we went an hour and a half in there. So by the time we got in here, we only had about 20 minutes. So we made the ill-fated decision to turn the class over to you guys, and we saw the results of that. And it was a lot of fun. For those of you here, it was a lot of fun. So thank you guys for sharing your Mother's Day stories last week. I think there were 2 Mother's Day stories shared, and the rest was really just other things. I also, Peggy has given us a testimony for those of you who didn't know. Peggy gave your Mother's Day service last week, of course, then chose to skip class. And when you do that, the class is here, we're all here, everyone knows we're here, you skip class. Of course, she was given a gastrointestinal illness, passed out at Olive Garden, and had to be taken by ambulance to St. Petersburg General. And I just want that to be a lesson to all of you people. Oh my God. If you come to class, stuff like that doesn't happen. So, obviously, we're just kidding. That was a serious thing, and Peggy, thank God you're okay, that you're feeling better, and Tom also went through those. There's a lot of influenza going around right now. Influenza A ran around Northside Christian School, all kinds of kids around sick. So, there's always stuff going around. But thank God we don't have to shut down again. For influenza this year.
Yay.
I need to tell you, all of this happened on Mother's Day. My granddaughter was here. She's 39 years of age. She's from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. She said at her class, Christians can have fun, can't they? And she's church unaffiliated, so she's going home. She met a lot of my friends from Women of the Word, and she's going home now to find her a church home so she can find her a good friend.
That's just wonderful. I actually attempted to apologize to your granddaughter last week, and she would have none of it. I said, we don't normally, that's not our normal class. Normally we actually are Bible centered and we study God's Word together. She said, this is the best Sunday school class I've ever been to.
talked about the virgin bees.
So for those of you who participated, I hesitate to say thank you, but that's what I'm supposed to say.
It was hilarious.
Well, it was a lot of fun. All right, today we're going to be back in Daniel chapter 3, but we have a guest. Anybody else here for the first time? I want to introduce you guys to Yvette. I'm going to have her spell her name for you.
Y-U-V-E-T-T.
Y-U-V-E-T-T, but no E in the end? And in the end, so this is you back. Thank you for coming this morning. We are so glad that you're here. And just telling you're kind of at a wild table, and if they get out of hand, we'll take them down for you. Okay, so it's good to see many of you back. It's great to be in God's house today. Amen. I was thankful for the message this morning. You know, we hardly ever talk about money this church. Like, I can't remember the last time we've ever talked about it. And but sometimes, like Rick said again, you need to be reminded of what's truly important. Right? The closer we get to the Lord's return, I think it just reminds us stuff of this world. It doesn't matter ill beans. I have a rental condo out down on the beach, and you'd think, oh, it's great, you get this rental income. That's not great. There's just nothing but problems down there. It's just, they keep hitting you with an assessment here, an assessment there. And I get an email this week from some woman I've never heard of. She says, you know that $200 plumbing repair you had back in December? And I was like, yeah, what about? She says, well, the guy 2 floors below you wants to sue you for $17 grand because he says the water leaked down and went and ruined his kitchen. I was like, whatever. So it's not only that moth doesn't rust and destroy, but I guess it kills drywall too. I guess you didn't have drywall back in the New Testament, you wouldn't put that in there.
You want me to get the bucket?
Yeah, so we're going to be passing the bucket around here today. Oh, I have insurance that this way for me. Just saying, come on.
I have insurance.
It's always something, always something. All right, open your Bibles. Daniel chapter 3. We have started this wonderful book of the Bible that tells us the history, and I'm going to come over here to Brian, because Brian is in a small group and we have Thursday nights. And what period of time, according to our book, does the book of Daniel come in?
Exile.
All right, it's during the exile, all right? During the exile. What does the word exile mean? It has nothing to do with scrambled or poached, right? Forced to leave your country. Is there any modern day example of this that you can think of? Yeah, the Ukraine. How many people from the Ukraine have been displaced? All right. Can you possibly fathom over 2 million people being displaced? The answer to that, is there any biblical equivalent to that?
Yes.
There is. What is it? Yeah, the Israelites, right? 2 million perhaps Israelites displaced from the land of Egypt. If you want to have a modern day comparison, you think about the Ukrainians, 2 million people leaving their country, trying to find a new place. That's exactly what happened back in Egypt, right? Except the difference is when the Israelites had to do this, they all had to do it all at the same time and all together. Can you imagine 2 million people pulling out at the same time? I mean, this is why it covers an entire book of the Bible, the book of Exodus. That was an unbelievable migration of an entire population. That's why it covers the entire book of the Bible and why it's referenced all the way through the Bible. Because it was such a monumentous event. That's why you get all those Old Testament books that look back to the Exodus, because it was unbelievable, right? Anyway, this comes from this as we continue to walk through the Old Testament history. God's people are in the land. Yes, Barbara, number 4. That's a question.
I just wonder if this is God taking the Jews, bring them home, because I heard that one of the group there that I support said that they're taking a lot of them back to Israel. I just wonder if this is God,
Yeah. Well, that's part of it. I mean, not all 2 million of them, but yeah, there's part of it. There's a part of that population that are Jewish and they're making their way back to Israel. Israel's opening their doors to them too. So you go through the Old Testament. Yes, can you grab a mic here and we'll run to this, Danny? Yep. We'll bring a mic to you.
I thought I was okay without
Well, you are, but actually we're not going to bring a mic to you. We're going to bring a Mandy to you.
no, just made me think of in modern day, forced exile from Germany into making the country of 1948 of Israel, the modern day Israel.
Yes.
Israel, yeah.
If you've never read in history about how the modern day state of Israel came about, it's a fascinating read. It's fascinating to see the shapes that were going on the globe at that time when God I mean, really supernaturally recreates this nation at that UN vote in 1948. Fascinating. And then the Exodus vote of all the Jews off the coast of the Mediterranean wanting to come. I mean, when you read about it, it's really fascinating. And then after that, like we did in our prophecy class last summer, you read about the 1967 war and all the things were the 6-Day War when the surrounding Arab countries tried to wipe them out, like literally wipe them out, and they lost. And Israel gained the Golan Heights, and they gained Jerusalem back. And so when you see what God is doing in modern day Israel, you just know He's setting it all up for His Son to return. He's just setting it up for the last days. It's supernatural and super fun to watch God at work right now. It's really cool. Now back in Daniel, this is a judgment time for the people of Israel, which you can look at our nation today and see judgment is definitely coming from what we're doing right now. But it's judgment time for Israel. They had unfaithful kings, unfaithful king. The people are just not following God. And just as God warned him in Deuteronomy, Joshua warned him, and Moses and Joshua warned him, if you don't follow God's law, there are repercussions. There's an entire chapter when we went through that of what will happen. And this chapter of Deuteronomy that says all of these judges and curses that are going to come upon the land are happening in the exile. Right? The Assyrians come, they wipe out the northern tribe of Israel. And now the Babylonians have come and they have taken out the tribes that are down there in Judah. Now, Daniel gets picked up and taken to the city of Babylon. Okay, that's exactly right. So as we get to Daniel chapter 3, we're going to pick up on these young teenagers who have been taken by force out of their land, taken to this country of Babylon, to the city, the capital city of that country. And last week we saw, 2 weeks ago, we saw Daniel being used by God to interpret the king's dream, and the king is given the future. Right? He's given this. Well, what did the king see in his dream? You guys remember? Well, one of you remembers. Clearly, the rest of you just looking at me with blank faces. All right. It was a statue. All right. What was the head of the statue made from? Gold. And then the midsection? Silver. And then the lower section? Bronze. And then the feet? All right. Iron and clay mixed together. So that we look to the future to see that these are the future world kingdoms that are coming to play. But it's this terrifying dream that Nebuchadnezzar has just haunts him, and then he requires, if you recall, the sages of the land, well, I'm not going to tell you the dream so you tell me the meaning. You tell me the dream and its meaning, right? Virtually, absolutely impossible, right? And Daniel interprets that dream, and who does Daniel give glory to? Right? We see this awesome character of this young man, Daniel, who is choosing to follow God and God alone in a foreign land, in a pagan land. This is this character trait of Daniel that we see. Today we're going to look at Daniel chapter 3, and I'm titling this chapter Yahweh in the Fire. Right? And it's a common story. You've probably heard this before, but before we get there, let's just again look at the map. All right? You see the major city on the west coast near the Mediterranean is Jerusalem. This is the city that Babylon comes and conquers, takes the best of the brightest minds, and exports them, exiles them all the way back to Babylon. And they don't go straight east. Why don't they go straight east? Why does the line go up and around?
There's water.
Because there's desert right there, so the trade routes all went up and around. Right? And what is the name of that major river that comes up and around? Is the Euphrates River, right? Euphrates River, which was in the land of, in the Garden of Eden and is still there today, right? The Euphrates River. All right, so they would have come up and around and then take along the trade routes to Babylon. Now, just so we can get a picture in our mind of the modern day Babylon, and I think I have a video for you next week that we're going to show, or if Chris is here, he will show. All right. I just want to talk to you just briefly about the city of Babylon. All right, we think of ancient history, but I don't want you to think of ancient history. If you think of Babylon back then, now they didn't have modern day equipment, right? But at the height of its glory, Babylon was the largest and wealthiest city in the world. Right? Under Nebuchadnezzar, it was a sprawling settlement of modern day, right? It grew into a major city as large as Chicago. So sometimes we tend to think, when we think back on the ancient civilizations, we think that they're less than today. Right? Absolutely not. This city was massive. It had towering temples, ornately tiled palaces, imposing city walls, thick enough for 2 chariots to pass each other side by side. That was the wall of the city of Babylon. All right? Massive, massive structure. Absolutely equivalent to our modern day massive city. Okay? Here is, and I think there's a different stuff. In addition to the colossal city walls, Nebuchadnezzar was responsible for the stunning processional way, a wide thoroughfare lined with ornately tiled walls depicting lions and dragons in bright blues and yellows. And the processional way led to the Ishtar Gate, the city's grand northern entrance. How many of you have heard of the Ishtar Gate? All right, if you haven't, it's a very popular gate in history, and you'll see, I think, a picture of it. They've made a recreation of it. This city was absolutely massive. It was the capital city of this global world power. So when you're thinking back to Babylon, don't think some tiny third world country, like the city of Luz. Right? We're not talking tiny little city. We're talking a massive capital city on par with something you would see today. As Chris is getting ready to fly for United and probably starts flying international flights, he's going to fly to these major cities around the world. Babylon at the time was the splendor of the world. Right? The Temple of Marduk, which sat atop a 300-foot-high ziggurat, accessible by a ramp that curved around its exterior, and they built all of these things without excavators and bobcats and backhoes, right? So how do they build this stuff? People. What's their tools? Hands. What else? They would have had other. They would have shovels, picks, right? Kind of basic tools, right? No power tools, right? No drills. They didn't have that whole 300-bit drill bit set that you see at Lowe's when you go in the store, or the Cobalt set. They didn't even have that. They didn't even have the Cobalt bat, right? Or the battery where they could change the battery. That wasn't super helpful back then. They didn't have any of that stuff. All right? The Greek historian Herodotus, writing centuries after Babylon's ending, described 8 towers stacked on top of one another. This massive, massive global capital city. Here is a pictorial representation of what it looked like. This is actually when the Medes and Persians come to attack them through the river, but this is an example just on the left there of what that city might have looked like. Just a massive constructed city. Right? This, anyone can tell me what this is a pictorial representation of? Yes, one of the potential 7 wonders of the world, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. When you think back to these ancient cultures, do not do what Americans always do and minimize what they were doing back then and compare it to us today. These people were brilliant. They were brilliant architects. They were brilliant builders. They did all of it without any of the modern conveniences that we have today. All right, which makes them, in my opinion, even more brilliant than us. No computers, no calculators. All right? Fascinating. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon would have been a crowning achievement of Nebuchadnezzar in his capital city. By the way, what do people do in capital cities today? How do they decorate them? What do they build in cities? Huge buildings, what do we call them today? Skyscrapers. So they had skyscrapers, to the extent that they called them that back then. What else do they build in their cities? Palaces, massive houses and palaces. You see people do that today? You really go anywhere other than the United States where there's monarchies. Right? Anyone been to London?
Yeah.
Been to London? Any palaces in London? Yeah? How many people is the Queen? How many people is she? It's not a trick question.
Oh, right, yeah, okay.
How many people is the Queen?
Just one.
She's a one people. She's one people. And how large is her house? Her palace?
Oh, the last time I went there, yes, very large.
It's very large. So why does she need such a large house? She built.
Well, it's royalty, isn't it?
Oh, I think so. All right. So have things changed? No, things haven't changed. Right? Royalty tend to build themselves big, massive palaces. It's nothing. It's the same today. Don't minimize the accomplishments of the Babylonians. They ruled the world. Anything he wanted, Nebuchadnezzar wanted. Anything he wanted happened. Right? He snapped his fingers. Anything he wanted happened. It's why, you remember last week from chapter 2, he tells the captain of the guard, all right, no one can figure out this dream, go kill them all. We'll kill them all, and we'll get new ones. Right? And they had to do it. Right? And he gets to Daniel's house, and Daniel's like, what? Can I talk to the king? Right? Can I get some advance warning before you take my head off? Right? The answer is no. If the king wants it to happen, the king says it gets to happen, and it happens. Right? Not like today. Yes, ma'am?
They also have monuments to their gods.
Monuments, thank you very much. Absolutely. They have, we call them monuments. Back then they would have called them temples. You'd call them a monument, right? Essentially that's what they were. But what did they do at the temples and the monuments? They worshipped these, women call them false gods. To them, they were their gods, right? They worshipped the god of fill in the blank. What's one of the gods? No, not the names, but something they would have worshipped. Baal. Why would they have worshipped these gods? What did these gods do for them? Well, what they thought they did. But they thought they controlled the weather. What else? Crops, fertility, having babies, yes?
They also had a great educational system.
Yes. Yes. Remember we talked about Daniel and his friends getting indoctrinated into the culture of Babylon? That was all part of what Nebuchadnezzar did. Right? We're not going to go back to fertility because of last week. Right? But I don't want to get back to the cows. But they did. They believed that these false gods controlled all of these things. Right? That was how they encountered the world and thought that happened. Right? They didn't know about the one true God. Right? And quite frankly, if you think about it from Babylon's perspective, why would they care about the one true God? They defeated the one true God's country. So our gods are bad at that, right? Our gods are bad. We do them. So God, just as he did in Egypt with the plagues, God is going to invade this capital city, Babylon, and he's going to use 4 young guys. The 4 guys who chose to steal government. All right? So last week, or 2 weeks ago, we saw in Daniel chapter 2, God invading the very palace of the king to give him a prophetic future of future world kingdoms, and he uses one guy, one teenage boy who stood for him. He gives that boy the interpretation of the dream. And that boy chooses, because he could have said, I'm the one who interpreted the dream. He doesn't do that. He gives all the glory to God. And then along the way he says, by the way, since you're going to give me all this glory and honor, I got these 3 friends. You're into that chapter? He says, how about these my 3 friends? These guys they're my best buds. Nebuchadnezzar promotes them too. All right, now we get to Daniel chapter 3. What do people today take pride in? Wealth, accomplishments, yes. Themselves, jobs, their family, yes. Their power, or what they consider, what they think is their power, prestige in their position. Their education, big today, their education. They get letters after their names. They put them together and make up little letters. Nobody knows what the letters mean. They're making sense, they're all Latin. What else they take pride in? Their cars. Oh, absolutely. Their possessions. Right? I drive a bike. We all have to compare with Lois's vehicle. Actually, Marie's vehicle. Ever seen what Marie drives? She's got the cutest little car, and if you look closely, there's nothing on the floor. She's using her feet, but it's a super cute little car. What is that thing called? A Zion. Zion. Yes, it's super cute. They don't make it anymore. Well, people got tired of their feet. Get really tired. They run like that. All right, what else do they take pride in? Let's think about the young people of today. What do they look like? What are their appearance? What are they wearing? Their music, what they're listening to. How do you know if a teenager listens to music, by the way?
Yeah, social media status.
Yes, yes. The teenagers of today, you don't even know that they're listening to music. They stick these things in their ear, right? And you go ready to talk to one, and they're talking away. And you think, this one's mentally disturbed. I mean, I've seen people like this my whole life. This one needs medication. But they're actually talking to somebody on the phone or something. They stick this thing in their ear, and they're good to go. Right? I mean, you know what I'm talking about that. You think this one, needs to go to PEMS for a couple of days. But no, they're talking to real people. Yeah.
everybody's got their own iPhone.
So last night, somebody was so kind as to give my wife and I tickets to a concert. We went to the Matthew West concert at Indian Rocks. It was a phenomenal concert. And I'm not a big music guy, so I don't typically go to those things, but this was wonderful. It was God honoring, the lyrics, it was wonderful. And in front of me and my wife were like maybe 4 children and their parents. I didn't see a father. I just saw maybe a mom, maybe a sister, and then like 4 kids. Do you know that the teenage girl that was there, she was probably, I'm gonna say middle school age. She was on her phone almost the entire concert. She was on Instagram, and I'm sitting from here to Barbara number, well, whoever we are. You're 4? Oh, that one is 3 then. I got your number wrong. I can keep track. Thank God you're not Barbara. I'm so glad you're with me. There's like 6 Barbara in here. You can't keep them straight. So Barbara number 4, from me to Barbara number 4 was this young girl, and she was on Instagram the entire concert, missing out. And finally, my wife leaned up in a very loving way and just told her, "Life is more than that." And she turned it off for a little bit, and then she turned it back on. She was addicted. She was addicted to her phone. So sad.
When my friends and I like go to dinner, even my family, when we go to dinner, we all lay our phones face down. Everybody has to lay their phone face down. First one that picks it up has to pay the bill.
What if nobody, how long you guys sit there, nobody brings the phone up? I'd be like, I'm going to the bathroom, get out of there. Well, yeah, I mean, just think about today. What do people take pride in? And as we think about that, anything new under the sun? Same thing people have always taken pride in. There's nothing new under the sun, right? Just different, we just look a little different. I mean, have you ever seen pictures from the 70s? All of you look a little different from those pictures. Well, I was wearing my curtains or something.
That was what Solomon said too, and we heard about Solomon today.
Yes, Solomon did say that exact same thing, right? You know, you read Solomon, it's kind of sad. When you read Ecclesiastes, you read about this guy, Chad mentions him. He's the wealthiest guy, he's the Elon Musk, or he's the billionaire of billionaires at the time. No one matched him. And you read the book of Ecclesiastes, and you almost hear him crying as the whole book, as he writes at the end of his life, he looks back and he's wasted it. Right? But he does come to the right conclusion at the end. He does come to the right conclusion. Right? He tried everything to make him happy. Everything this world offered. It didn't make him happy. Read the book of Ecclesiastes. It's why God puts it in Scripture. All right, A King's Bride, verses 1 to 7. I'm reading the Bible. So here's my phone. All right, Daniel chapter 2. You have your phone up there? Can you read verses 1 to 7 for me, please? 3. Somebody read verses 1 to 7, please. Oh, I'm still playing on the mic. All right, 1 to 7, please. Thank you.
King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold 60 cubits high and 60 cubits wide, set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. He then summoned the satraps, prefects, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the other provincial officials to come to the dedication of the image he had set up. So the, satraps, whatever.
Yeah.
Prefects, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the other provincial officials assembled for the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up, and they stood before him. Then the herald loudly proclaimed, "Nations and people of every language, this is what you are commanded to do. As soon as you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipe, and all kinds of music, you must fall down and worship the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Whoever does not fall down and worship will immediately be thrown into the blazing furnace." Therefore, as soon as they heard the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, and all kinds of music, all the nations and peoples of every language fell down and worshipped the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up.
This to me is fascinating. Anyone aware of any public figure, past or present, who's ever set up an image to themselves? Saddam Hussein? And Chinese leaders? Vladimir Lenin? Right? Yeah, this is nothing new. All right? Making images of stone or whatever, making monuments for themselves because they're so great. Right? This is a little unique picture that we get here in Daniel chapter 3 of this king. By the way, he was the king of the world. And he wasn't Leonardo, right? He was the king of the world. Everybody looked up to him. Everybody was fear of him. He had conquered the entire known world at the time. He was the king of the world. Right?
Those other countries that hang banners of themselves.
You must go to go. You have to go to the parade and worship your leader. North Korea, they worship their leader. Right? China, yeah. So this isn't new, but the worship of this guy, right? Where did he get this idea to build this statue for people to worship? A gold statue. Exactly right. He got it from the dream, right? He takes the dream that God gives him of the future, and what does he do with it? He makes it about himself. Remember, you, O king, are the head of gold. Well, I'm not just the head of gold, I'm the whole statue.
Yeah.
Right? I'm the whole statue, and you are going to worship me. And Nebuchadnezzar gets it wrong. By the way, at the end of chapter 2, our questions in 2 weeks ago, the very last question, our discussion question was, does Nebuchadnezzar, he makes this proclamation about the God of the Hebrews, right? The God of Daniel. How about this God of Daniel is so great, right? But do you think Nebuchadnezzar became a believer in Yahweh at that point?
No.
Clearly not, because the next chapter records what he does next. He builds this massive statue, right? Why does he want the statue to be worshipped? He's a megalomaniac. The definition of megalomaniac is pride. Right? What?
He's number one.
He is number one. Barbara, just like you. We don't worship Barbara, number one. Right? Say it again. Control freak. Absolutely. Sometimes politicians get in their heads that they're God. Right? We got a lot of them. But not just here. Everywhere. Everywhere. Right? Sometimes teachers.
It's enough that he could brainwash the whole nation.
He's able to do this because of his power. He controls everything. So of course he's able to do this. And look, the Bible is amazing when you look at the Bible. Look at the language here that Daniel, as he writes, it makes it very clear that it's just the 12 people there in the palace that are doing this worshiping, right? Oh, that's a little bit of sarcasm. Who's there to worship the statue? He makes it very clear. Daniel makes it abundantly clear who was there. It's everyone. Every title that you could come up with, which we don't have these titles, but let's just use the titles we have today. All right? There will be the governors, the senators, the representatives, the council people. What else is a government title? A mayor, the mayors, the principals maybe. Everybody was there, and everyone had to be there. What was the penalty if you didn't go? The penalty was death. So, as you can see, they're fairly motivated to go. Right? And the Bible's just so funny. So they all get there, verse 3, and then the herald proclaims aloud, and by the way, they didn't have amplification at the time, there had no microphone like this. You're commanded that when you hear all this music play, it's time to do what? Tacitly acknowledge Nebuchadnezzar's worship? What is the position he requires the people to be in? On their knees. Not only do you have to, worship me, yeah, you're great, man, you got it, you're good. Oh, no. Bow down on your knees and worship a statue. Right? Come on, we think this is ridiculous today, right? Anyone seen pictures of the Hindu festivals? Anyone? Any religion we know today that requires their people to bow down 3 times a day? On their knees? Facing a city? It's nothing new under the sun. This is all demonic. There's nothing new under the sun. Yes, ma'am. You require, you're talking about the leader of Russia. All right, require all of his people to be there. Sure. Well, and when you go to some of these other dictatorships, you see they require all the people to show up in the military parades and whatnot. Yes, Tom. Yes.
Who wants to control the virus?
Oh, I see. Okay, I got you. Okay, thank you. All right, no problem. Thank you. I appreciate it.
We're such a gentleman. You're welcome.
I greatly appreciate that. Would anyone like to bow down and worship Tom? Or just stepping forward to save Mandy her steps? Here's what we see the progression of. If you recall, when Daniel and his three friends first get there, you see this indoctrination program, right? This indoctrination program. You will become a good Babylonian citizen. You'll become a good citizen of the globe. By the way, that's what's coming. You're going to become a good global citizen. You do the things that we say are right. You'll get a good GSR score, ESR score, whatever the things are. What's that score called in Vickers?
Socialist credit.
The social credit score. All of that's coming, friends. It's coming our way, fast as furious. You'll get a good global citizen. Right? But indoctrination in this chapter changes persecution. Because if you don't do what they tell you to do, what's going to happen? In this case, you're going to lose your life. And they even tell you how they're going to kill you. It's always wonderful to know how you're going to die. So much wonder how we're going to die. In this case, you know pretty quickly. Well, I'm going to get burned up. All right? Anyone want to go to the fiery furnace? Who wants to get in line? The line for the fiery furnace was fairly short. Right? No one wanted to be in the line. All right? So they decided, okay, well then, I guess I'm going to go worship the statue. All right? I was going to go to the gym. Instead, I'm going to worship the statue today. All right? The progression from Daniel 1 to Daniel 3. Now, man's laws, if you look at your sheet, man's laws now conflict with God's laws. Who, by the way, is the only one that should be worshipped in this man? It is God Almighty. Is that the clock? Did you move it ahead?
No.
No.
I know.
All right. Let's move on quickly. We're at verse 7. There's too many verses to go. Chaldeans come forward, verse 8. They come forward and they maliciously accuse the Jews, and they declare to the king, O king, live forever. All right, see the sarcasm there. You, O king, have made a decree that every man who hears, and then they repeat his decree. Verse 11, whoever doesn't fall down gets to get cast in the fiery furnace. There are certain Jews. You hear them dripping? Certain Jews who give appointed over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, pay no attention to you. They don't serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. Who chooses to accuse these three Hebrews?
Wise men.
Right? The political leaders. And why would they care about the three Hebrews? Oh, do you remember chapter 2, how it ends? They were absolutely jealous. The end of chapter 2, the king promotes these three young men, and when he promotes them, what does that mean to the people who were there? They got demoted. All right? They happy about that? This is modern day politics. All right? This could be written about St. Pete City Council. All right? The Hillsborough City Council. All right? Some of you serve on condo boards. Woo! This is the condo board right here. Right? Fighting over their positions. This is completely natural behavior for sinful mankind. All right, who chooses to accuse them? Probably the guys that got bumped out of their jobs. And we don't know that exactly, but I think we can read into that. All right? Does God stop the persecution? Okay. Big old reminder for us. God allows us to go through persecution. Verse 13, Nebuchadnezzar is, he's just mildly offended about these videos, right? Look what happens here. Just think about this. Think about the pride of this guy. He's got everybody in the kingdom, everybody bowing down. And three teenage guys, maybe guys in their 20s by now, their young 20s, chose not to. Who cares? Well, he cares. The Bible records that he was in such a furious rage, he requires them to be brought. Where are they brought? Before him where? Where is he? He's in the palace, all right? Make sure we have our geography, right? They brings him to the palace. We talked about that last week. Right? By the way, we talked about this last week too. Where's Daniel? He's not at the palace. Why not? Why do we know Daniel wasn't at the palace? Because he's not mentioned. He's not here in chapter 3. So he's on a job. He's been sent out to do something, right? He's not there. If he was there, he'd be in the chapter. He's not there. He's working for the king somewhere, all right? He's not there. These 3 guys are there. They get summoned to the palace, all right? Just like Christine. She gets in trouble, the queen brings her right to the palace. Okay, Christine, she didn't bring cookies this week. All right, Nebuchadnezzar. Those were awesome, by the way, last week. Awesome. Nebuchadnezzar answers and says to them, is it true that you do not serve my gods or worship the image that I have set up? Now just think about the environment. They get pulled in front of the king, in his palace, in his throne room, surrounded by the guards, with a very angry king of the universe screaming at them. Is this true? I mean, think about the peer pressure. The pressure on these 3 young men to conform. Right? What does the king say? Now, if you're ready to fall down and worship, good. But if you don't, you will immediately be cast into the fiery furnace. And who is the God that will deliver you out of my hands? Just think about the sarcasm, all right, dripping out of Nebuchadnezzar's mouth. He's going to say to you. Yeah, and the sense of entitlement, right? That's exactly right. The sense of entitlement this politician has. All right? Anything new? No. Oh, no. Never mind. Let's move on. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, yes, sir, we're sorry. We didn't do it right the first time. We're really sorry. We wouldn't do it. Right? Isn't that the answer? That's the answer that they should have given, right? That's the right answer. That's not the answer they give. Oh, Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. By the way, if they just stopped there, how do you think Nebuchadnezzar would have enjoyed that response? Are you kidding me? Who are these people? Are nothing compared to him. And their first thing is, we have no need to answer you this matter. Can you imagine the boldness of these? I want to meet these guys when we get to heaven. If this be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, okay. But if not, this reminds me of that verse, the Lord I believe, help my unbelief, right? He's like, well, our God can handle us. These 3 guys stand in front of Nebuchadnezzar and say, by the way, God, our God can handle us. But if not, be it known to you, O king, we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. Can you imagine being in that room? Can you imagine Abishai, right? The king of the guards? Everyone there is going to be like, are you? Listen to what they're saying to Nebuchadnezzar. They're stupid. He's going to kill them. They stand right up for the most powerful man on earth. My God can do it. Verse 19. Nebuchadnezzar was filled with fury, and the expression of his face. Listen to the detail that the Bible gives us, right? Not only does it tell us he was filled with fury, we get his facial change. You ever seen someone who's so angry that their face changes? Right? Right? They turn red, right? You can see it in their eyes and in their face, their jaw sets, right? So the description here that clearly Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are telling Daniel, who then writes this down, they're like, dude, Daniel, his face changed. He was so mad. You ever been so mad that your face changes? Yeah, we're not going there today. I don't trust any of you with those testimonies. So you can write them down and submit them, and we'll preview them. All right? He gets so angry, he orders the furnace. All right, it's a fiery furnace already. All right, you don't need to do anything to it. It's sufficient. But he's so mad, he orders the furnace heated 7 times more than it was usually heated. And he ordered some of his mighty men of his army. Right, so now you've got not only the officers of the palace, but now the army is there. He's so mad, he tells the army, fire that thing up, throw these guys in. All right? And by the way, he probably doesn't say it in a polite voice. You guys, why don't you, I'm very disappointed today. I think I'd like you to turn the service, turn the furnace up, and then these people guys are going to throw it. You think that's how it went down? Do you think there was like yelling and screaming involved here? Right? The king had lost it. He had absolutely lost it. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Say it again? Yes. All right. Well, since Charlie Logs is now here, we thank you for stepping into his place and jumping several verses ahead. All right, take that credit. You know, he used to be a Charlie in the room. All right. right, so that is the next verse, and since you're so anxious to get there, let's read it. The men were bound in their cloaks, their tunics, their hats, or other garments. So, this is nice, at least he allowed them to die well dressed. All right? Then they were thrown into the burning fiery furnace, and because the king's order was urgent, and the furnace was overheated, the flame of the fire killed the men who took him up. Verse 22. So, some of his finest military men get killed by this, right? This guy's so mad. Have you ever been so mad that your anger injured people around you? Anyone have that kind of a problem with anger? Look, there are a lot of people who have this problem. Who is it that can help us with that kind of problem? Only God. Only God can help us. These three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they fell bound into the fiery furnace. I don't think we have any modern day equivalent to this for us to try to understand exactly what this was like. Can anyone come up with something modern we can remember or something that's this hot that they're killing just by getting close to it? Maybe, but the gas chambers were silent. Okay, maybe a rocket.
Like a steel plant, like where they
Steel plant, there you go.
wear like
Yes, well, that's a good analogy, Brian, where you have to wear the protection.
Like
Because you
Chernobyl.
can just get it near it with
Was that
nothing,
93?
right? Okay, there's a good analogy. All right.
What's that?
Verse 24, they throw him in, right? Because that's going to appease the king, right? He's gonna, I don't think that would appease the guy. He'd get him, he'd kill him, he'd still be mad, right? But whatever, this is what he decides to do. He sees his friends die, wherever these military officers, he's probably upset about that. You know, the guys in the room are upset with that. Don't go ahead, why do you have to do that, king? 24, Nebuchadnezzar was astonished, and he rose up, what does your Bible say? In haste. What does he rise up from? His throne. Because he's the king. He's sitting on the throne. And he's ordering these things to happen. Do this, do this, you do this, you do this, do it now. He's sitting on his throne. Yes, wait. Yes. You're remembering back to the contest on Mount Carmel against the prophets of Baal. Yes. And you see too there the supernatural battle between the forces of evil and the forces of good. That's exactly what's going on here. Ultimately, this is the gods of Babylon versus Yahweh, the one true God. Ultimately, that's what this is. When Nebuchadnezzar made a puppet, their paw, right? He declared to his counselors, "Didn't we cast 3 men bound into the fire?" And they said, "What would you say?" Don't you love the answer? True, O king. Whatever you say, buddy. I mean, they're not going to contradict him at all. And he says, "But I see 4 men, unbound." What did he throw them in? He tied them up, right? They're unbound. And they're walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the appearance of the 4th one is like a son of the gods. What? And now I don't know how big this furnace was, but it's big enough that 4 grown men are walking around in it. Right? And I don't know what this fiery furnace was used for. There must have been some practical use for this. All right, I don't know what it is. Probably check the commentary and see what they say. But whatever it is, it's massive. All right, and these guys are thrown in. The guys that throw them in are killed. All right, that's certainly understandable. And these 4 guys are now walking around. Excuse me, your wife would like to see. Oh, okay. He wasn't paying attention to you anyway, so. Yes. Could have been. Could have been. Could have been. We don't get the exact, but we get what we get. Right? We have to use our imagination for some of this. 26. Nebuchadnezzar comes near the door, so there is a door of the fire furnace, and he. My guess is they might have turned it down just a little bit. So we don't get that in scripture, but I'm assuming they turned it down a little bit, right? And he calls out to them, and now just listen to the change in the tone from Nebuchadnezzar. We don't get the tone in the text, but you can read into the tone of the text. Because listen what he says. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, my good friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, my good friends, servants, what's he say? Servants of the Most High God. What do you think? Nebuchadnezzar sitting on his throne, hot as a hornet, and then this happens. What do you think runs through his mind? Think about the last 2 chapters. Who are these 3 guys?
Your servants have died, you realize.
He knows who these kids are. Do you think he forgot who these kids were when he threw them in? Do you think he forgot who these three kids were when they stood in front of him and stood against him in front of everyone in the palace and said, well, yeah, we're not gonna bow down to your statue. We're gonna do what you do. Our God can save us. He might not. But he can, if he wants to. And we're gonna bow down to yours. You think he knew who these three kids were? He knew exactly who they were. Right? He knew exactly who they were. And he was tired of these three guys. Throws them in. Gonna get rid of this problem. He tells them, servants of the Most High God, we have a recognition. Come out and come here. He still can't get out and give orders. He is the king. So then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego come out from, the Bible is also fairly subdued in their language. They come out of the fire. How many of you want to be in that room when that happens? And all the politicians gather together. What are they doing, guys? What are they doing? They're getting around him. They're like, you gotta be kidding me. This is, what in the world? They're getting around. What are they doing? You know what they're doing. They're getting up close and personal, right? They're checking these guys out. This is unbelievable, right? They're checking these guys out. We know that that's what they're doing because look, they saw the fire had not any power over the bodies of men. So we get the five senses here. They're seeing it, right? The hair of their heads wasn't singed. Their cloaks weren't harmed, and there was no blood. They're smelling them, right? They're touching them, they're smelling them, they're seeing them. Reminds me of the disciples when Jesus rises from the dead. They're using the five senses that they have to look at these guys and like, we've never seen anything like this. We've never seen anything like this. These guys should be ashes, right? And there's nothing wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with their clothes. Nebuchadnezzar answers, verse 28. Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted him and set aside the king's command. He knew exactly what these guys were doing. Yielded up their bodies rather than serve and worship any God except their own God. Nebuchadnezzar is no dummy. He didn't become king of Babylon because he was a dunce, right? He didn't get there because he had the right genes or the right family. This guy was brilliant and intelligent, and he recognizes what has just happened. He recognizes who these kids are, and he recognizes that God is on their side. Then he does something amazing in verse 21. I make a decree. I know the times that might have rolled over. Any people, nation, or language that speaks anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be torn limb from limb. You can't take Nebuchadnezzar out of Nebuchadnezzar. You can't just say, acknowledge the God of gods. This is what he has to go to the extent. Tear them from limb to limb, and their houses will be laid in ruins. Right? Because he's Nebuchadnezzar. For there is no other God who can rescue in this way. And then because he's Nebuchadnezzar, because we're going to set up the rest of the book, what does he do in verse 30? He promotes him. He promotes him again. Right? All right, he promotes him again. All right. There is so way too much in this chapter. This is an unbelievable story of supernatural delivery, right? It's unbelievable. And if you guys haven't got us talking and gotten off, we would have have time at the end of class. This class goes way too short. But this is massive foreshadowing, and we don't have too much time to get into it, but in the future, in Revelation chapter 13, if we have time, the final world kingdom, the final world ruler who comes out of the rule of the iron and clay, this man, who we call the Antichrist, we don't know who he is, but he gets revealed. This man, he will pull a Nebuchadnezzar. He will do exactly this thing in the future. And we have a video which we will show next week. We showed in our prophecy conference about the giant. The technology is here for him to have a statue that can be made to talk, and the entire world will be made to worship the statue of the Antichrist. That is this story repeating itself exactly in Revelation chapter 13. Who in the future, by the way, will not worship that statue? The believers of the time. Many of them will be Jews. What will happen to them? They will be killed. The Bible talks about they will be killed. They will be worshipped. The ones that are not saved, etc., will be killed. Look, everything is in Scripture for a reason. This is an awesome, unbelievable story. I think, if anything, it gives us Hope in the culture that we're currently living in. Look, you can stand for Jesus. You can stand for Jesus, and he will always be with you. No matter your age, not be 15, right? Maybe wherever you are placed, stand for Christ. Talk about him. Do not be ashamed of the gospel. Right? Be a vocal proponent for Jesus wherever you are placed. All right. We are way over. Yes, Joanne.
If we are going to relate with this situation, we have to look at those men in that fiery furnace, and we say, that could have been the end, but it wasn't. Jesus himself was there with him. And for us today, whatever we're going through, whether it's whatever the worst thing that you are going through, our take home is whatever it is, if we are his follower, he is right there with us. He said, I will never leave you or forsake you. So our message, from your message today, is he is with us, no matter what. And as he took care of them, he's going to take care of us.
Right, not necessarily saving us from the trial, but being there with us through the trial. Next week, we will do breakfast next week. We talked about doing breakfast the weekend of Memorial Day, but we're doing a family service in the church where we do communions and baptisms and baby dedications and all that kind of stuff. So that service will likely go long. We may or may not have class that Sunday, so to prepare for that, let's do breakfast next week. The service project at Feeding Pinellas is this Friday night. This Friday night from 5 to 7. Sign-ups are in the back. We'll just meet there. It's right there off 54th Avenue, just a few blocks away from the church. So if you want to help us with a service project, sign up in the back. Again, we're just going to show up like we did last time. We put our little aprons on, and then we serve people food. That's what we're going to do. We're just going to love on them in Jesus' name. Hey, buddy, we're almost done. Prayer requests, put your prayer requests in the back. We will send those out this week. So then please let us know how we can be praying for you. All right, anything else for us? Sorry we went a little over today. Tracy, did you sell her house? The house is sold. So the Jenny's house is sold. They're going to be off to Georgia here shortly. When? June 10th. So we got you for a couple more weeks. Before you leave us.
Well, from this lesson today, I learned that I think Nebuchadnezzar was very humble after this experience. Yeah. Very humble. For a while, anyway.
For a while, right? Yeah, for a while. And just hold on to that, chew on that. Come back next week. Are you here next week? No? My co-teacher's going again. I'm taking a relook at the name co-leader. I'm going to rename him substitute. It's all right. Chris has just taken a new job with United Airlines. He'll give you one anytime he speaks. He'll give you the update that he has been hired by New Airline. So clapping for Chris. Not with Delta. He's moving to United, so he can fly bigger planes. So that's good. That's good. All right. Anything else, guys? All right. Next week, Daniel chapter 4. We'll be back in it. All right. God bless you. See you soon.